Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25 Media. We feature top founders, executives, and business leaders from all over the world.
Chad Franzen here, co-host for this show where we feature top restaurateurs and business leaders. This is part of our SpotOn Series. SpotOn has the best-in-class payment platform for retail, and they have a flagship solution called SpotOn Restaurant, where they combine marketing, software, and payments all in one. They've served everyone from larger chains like Dairy Queen and Subway to small mom-and-pop restaurants. To learn more, go to SpotOn.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. We help B2B businesses to get ROI, clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships through Done For You podcasts. If you have a B2B business and want to build great relationships with clients, referral partners, and thought leaders in your space, there's no better way to do it than through podcasts and content marketing. To learn more, go to rise25media.com or email us at support@rise25media.com. Tariq Johnson is founder and CEO at Tariq Johnson's Dream Life Mastery. He dreamed of being a full-time entrepreneur for over 10 years. Within 60 days of opening his first franchise, he became profitable and went on to build a $2.5 million business with multiple locations. Tariq now teaches others how to free themselves from corporate slavery through owning a franchise. Tariq, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Chad. Thanks for having me.
Hey, so tell me about the time when you first started thinking about owning your own business and being an entrepreneur. What kind of things were you doing?
Yeah, I guess the most prevalent memory that comes to mind is mowing the lawn when I was, I don't know, maybe like 11 or 12 years old. And just, I've always been in my head and, really a thinker. And I just remember mowing the lawn thinking, wow, one day I want to be a businessman and I want to make a lot of money. And, I grew up in a modest background. We never really needed for anything, but just very modest. And I always wanted so many things. And it was just always, we can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. So I remember back then thinking, wow, one day I'm going to own a business and I'll be able to buy or experience whatever I want.
Did you have like your own lawn mowing business, or were you just mowing your family's lawn?
At that time, in that specific memory, I was mowing my family's lawn, but I wind up starting, that was like one of my first businesses, a small little landscaping company. And hindsight being 2020, man, I could have really grown and scaled that thing because it started taking off pretty quickly. I just had no idea how to run a business.
I think that's pretty common for most like 13-year-olds who mowed lawns around the neighborhood, Yeah. What about entrepreneurship was appealing to you?
I would say back then it was all pretty vain. It was all just, I want to make a lot of money and be able to feel significant. I think primarily back then that's what it was. And just the idea of, wow, I could be a businessman one day just sounded cool. So I think the initial thoughts started out purely for self-motivation.
As you kind of, as you grew up and got older and you had other jobs, and you still had that aspiration at that time, what kind of became more appealing to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for most people and for me, really the idea of being able to control my own future, being able to have freedom and flexibility. I went getting into the financial world pretty young. I got my investment licenses when I was 19 years old. I got my 6 and 63 back then. And so I started experiencing what that was like to, have to go in at a certain time, leave at a certain time, only have a certain lunch break and only a certain amount of vacation. And it started to get old pretty quickly.
What kinds of jobs did you have?
Primarily in the financial services space. So I started out working at actually a music and arts place because my uncle was the manager there. So that was seasonal when I was like 14 years old. Then pretty much all throughout high school, I worked at Ace Hardware and pretty much did everything there and got cross-trained, started the landscaping business in a more serious way. And the owner was cool with me getting customers from the store. So I was able to it was like an easy free marketing,
sure,
which is great. And then eventually I got a job at a bank as a teller. And then as a personal banker, started getting my investment licenses, worked as a financial advisor, did pretty much any sort of personal banking, business banking, investment related positions through the bank, primarily in the investment field as I got more and more licenses. And I took a stint off from financial services for about a year. And I was traveling as a speaker for Tony Robbins, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. So you had some licenses, you had some pretty good jobs. What made you decide that you just wanted to do your own thing finally?
Yeah, the dream was always there, to be quite honest. And, I wish at that time that I had the confidence and kind of the mental fortitude to just push through. Because I really think that landscaping business that I had started while I was working at Ace Hardware could have been very successful. I started getting commercial jobs, came very close to buying a truck. We actually put a deposit on one, and I wound up losing it because I wound up changing my mind. But I guess I just knew. I started reading a very popular book called The Secret when I was 18 years old, and started learning about the law of attraction. And I looked back at some of the events that had happened in my life. I was an athlete for many years. I wrestled, and I connected the dots. And I thought, wow, I really believe in this concept that what we hold deeply in our mind winds up coming to fruition. And so I wanted to really be an entrepreneur. But again, the years and years of just experiencing the same thing in the corporate world. And as I started to make more and more money, it was bittersweet. Most people, they get excited when they start to make more money in their job. And for me, it was very exciting. I started to, because I was in a role as a financial advisor where I got paid off of my performance, I started to have months where I would make over $30,000 in a month, which was very exciting and very cool. But then I thought, holy crap, as I get used to this income or lifestyle, how am I going to replace this one day? It's going to get harder and harder and harder to make the leap. So you did. And did you quit your job and start building a business, or did you start it while you were still working? Yeah, so it's like a great segue into really, what I do now in terms of helping people make the transition through franchise ownership, which is, I started to think, I over the years of working in the corporate world, I had chased many shiny objects of online marketing and, Amazon business and Kindle publishing and this and this and this and this. And I just realized that I was not great at following through, and I'm very analytical. So for what I found, because I work in my business now with some very successful and accomplished people in the corporate world, but they're not able to carry that over to being an entrepreneur themselves because they get so caught up in overthinking things and feeling like things have to be perfect. Entrepreneurship is so different. You really have to have that prototype kind of mindset and that progress over perfection mindset. So for me, my wife and I were living in California, and I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I just thought, wow, I figured out at that point that I was very good at executing when I had the system. If I had the system, I could execute the system. If you wanted me to come up with the system, not so much, because that's where I got caught up in my own head. So I thought, wow, franchise ownership seems like that could be a match, because it's, generally speaking, you have a proven system and you follow the system and you can be successful. So I thought, wow, this could be a great way to create my transition plan to open a franchise while I'm still working, get it built up, and maybe over the next 3 years or so, I could replace my income and it would make that transition smoother.
Is that what
and
happened?
So that's exactly. So that's what we wound up doing, opening up our first franchise location in California, got it profitable in less than 60 days, which was a juice bar franchise. And it's not, I would say it's probably not common in the food industry to get profitable in 60 days. And so that helped to start scaling things up pretty quickly. And then we wound up moving across the country. And so I had to leave my job anyways, because we were going to move. And then it turns out where we were moving, there was a resale location of the same franchise brand for sale that was struggling and was not profitable, or was kind of break even. And so when we moved, I wound up going in, getting that store turned around, increasing sales over 40%. And so, ultimately franchise ownership was helped me to, create that transition for myself.
Sure. Well, that's amazing. So you invested in this juice bar, and you turned it around, or you built it up so it was successful within 60 days. What was the magic formula? I've heard a lot of people, they say they do it and it's a struggle for the first 2 years, 60 days, and you were a success. What did you do?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a couple of layers to that, which is one, I don't want to say it was luck, but right now when I coach people, I teach them what I call the profitable franchise formula. And it has a few different components to it. And at the time I hadn't created this formula. I looked back to go, wow, what did I do? And one, I picked something that overall was alignment with my skill sets, right? Which, okay, you could choose many businesses that may be in alignment with your skill sets, but I love operations. So I was really OCD about the operations of the store. Number two is, and really the main thing, one of the main keys was there was tremendous demand in the marketplace. That's one of the items in my profitable franchise formula. The other one is to choose a business with profit potential. And the other one is to choose a business that you believe in instead of chasing shiny objects. You actually believe in the product or service, not just because you think it'll make you a lot of money. But ultimately, there was a tremendous amount of demand, which is why we chose the location we did. There weren't any competitors within a 5.5 mile radius. And I had done a lot of research on looking at the county and city website of all the construction projects that were being done in the area. The location did not meet any of the franchisors, most of the franchisors' demographic criteria, but my gut told me this location would be successful. And I thought, okay, in 1 year, it's a crapshoot. I don't know. We could make money. We might not. But I felt like over 3 to 5 years, we would crush it. And I have since sold that location. But that store, went from doing, $470,000 in sales our first year. That store does almost $800,000 a year in sales now in year 4. So my instinct was right.
So if apparently was. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing now. Then you had success as a franchisee, and now what are you doing in relationship to that?
Yeah, sure. So the short answer is I help unfulfilled and frustrated employees transition from employee to entrepreneur through franchise ownership. So I coach individuals, and I have a whole program and a course of that coaches people on how to go from A to Z. Like, hey, I want to transition. I don't want to be in a job anymore, whether they want to do that over the next year or over the next 5 years. And I help them go through the entire process, A to Z. I created a system of how to narrow down 4,000 franchisors to specific industries that match their needs, all the way through getting through the due diligence process, getting their business funded, and then getting it profitable as quickly as possible. And I kind of wind up stumbling into that specifically. I wind up starting a YouTube channel a couple of years ago, just starting to kind of share some of my experiences, and frustrated that as I was trying to build my franchise business in the beginning, that there wasn't any content out there for existing franchisees. Most of it was all people who were trying to sell you a franchise. And so that was frustrating for me. And I just felt like I wanted to share my experience of mistakes I had made. Turns out there really wasn't anyone doing that on YouTube. And so I've been able to build a multiple 6-figure business just purely off of YouTube.
Wow. So are you still a franchise owner?
No. So I wound up selling both of my locations. we did a lot of moving. So the first location was in California. We moved to Florida, so 2,500 miles away, ran that store pretty much completely absentee for 2 years, then sold it, kept me up at night thinking if my manager left, because I was very reliant on my manager. And then the other location that we had bought in Florida, then we moved again 3 hours away, still in Florida. And so we wound up selling that location. So at some point I will join the franchisee party again. I just want to make sure we don't move again.
What made you decide? Sure. What made you decide to do this then, to consult with people who are potential franchisees?
Yeah, that's it. Well, I always wanted to have an online brand helping people. I just really didn't know specifically what space I was going to do that in. And right around when I was in the middle of turning around the store in Florida, shortly after we had bought it, I was in the store, every day getting it turned around. And at the same time, I was thinking about and had hired a coach myself on how to create an online brand. And it just seemed pretty obvious that I should do it around what I was actually doing at the moment, which was, turning around my franchise and being a franchise owner. And then it just started to evolve. Again, I started making those YouTube videos. I took a hiatus of kind of not doing the online stuff. And it slowly transitioned. At first, I was just working with anyone and everyone as kind of a business coach, and people who had a business, people who just wanted to start a business, people who were in the franchise space. And eventually, I really niched down and focused to the franchise space specifically because, I really felt like what the information I had was highly, highly, highly valuable. And I also found that there was a missing gap in the marketplace, which was 9.9 out of 10 people that talk about franchises online are all people that want to sell you a franchise to make a commission. And there's a whole other world of people out there who are kind of DIYers, where they don't want to deal with a franchise broker and they want to do it themselves, but they want to make the best decision. And so really what I've done is I started catering my business to mostly that crowd and those individuals who have either already found a franchise concept that they like, or they want to do it themselves and they don't want to work with someone and be limited by those options. And I basically provide them the A to Z framework for that.
How did you kind of get clients at first? It's one thing to say I've owned a couple of successful franchises, but then also to have people pay you for your advice. How did you kind of get clients at first?
All YouTube. Yeah, all YouTube. Yeah. So I created the YouTube channel. The cool thing about that, again, there really wasn't many people doing it. And I was just really providing so much value. And I created like an opt-in on my website. So in my videos, I would say, hey, head over to my website and you can grab my 7-step blueprint to business profits in 60 days, kind of breaking down the tactical of exactly how I got the store profitable in 60 days. And then it kind of started to take off, and people started to reach out and reach out to me. And it was slow at first, and it was a grind. And now really at this point, it's I don't want to say the business is mature, but I have a nice system in place, and I have a video editor, and I have an assistant, and these cool things so that I can focus on the fun stuff. When in the beginning, I was grinding 12, 14 hours a day doing the things that were just awful.
I've spoken to numerous franchisees on this podcast. Some people from Jimmy John's, a lot of restaurant franchisees. Would you have any best practices or advice you'd kind of give to people who are specifically getting into the restaurant industry through becoming a franchisee?
Yeah, well, one piece of advice I would say right now is don't.
Okay.
Right now is a very, very challenging time for anyone in the food space, given inflation. It hit the market hard. I mean, as I just sold my other location a few months ago, but I mean, there were some cost of goods where we saw increases of 50, 60, 70%, which is very challenging. So if you're already in the space, well, you're just going to have to hold on. in terms of you're just gonna have to wait it out, or maybe you should sell and wait for things to cool off. But if you're thinking about getting into that space, I would hold off for now until the labor market cools down, until inflation cools down, because you take a business that already has thin margins and you make it even more challenging. But if someone's already a food franchisee, know your numbers for sure. I think what happens is there are a lot of people that don't know business, and they don't know their numbers. They're not looking at their profit and loss statements. They don't know what their cost of goods are. They don't know what their food cost is, and maybe they're tracking their labor costs. But until you really have a very, very clear idea of where you are right now in terms of your numbers, it's really, really challenging to try to figure out any way to grow. And you might be working harder, not smarter. Sometimes the easiest thing you could do is maybe try to trim a couple of percentage points here and there. And the other thing that I did, it's very popular now, but back in 2017, when our store was opening, it wasn't as popular in the franchise space. Was I started doing social media marketing, and I did it on my own. And I would just run ads within a 5-mile radius around our store that I created. It was nothing fancy, and just tried to get as much branding and exposure as possible. And the amount of exposure that you can get for a couple of $100 on Instagram or on Facebook is really, really insane. And I did that from before day one of which we were open. I think that really helped us. I think we're at 4 years later. A lot of people are doing that now, but that was something that was very helpful.
Can you tell me, without maybe naming them specifically, about a client who came to you and benefited from your consultation? Maybe how things are different for them now compared to when they reached out to you, and maybe tell me what industry they're in.
Yeah, sure. So I mostly specialize really in helping people that are getting into franchising, really, as opposed to existing franchisees. So, a lot of people that come to me are stuck. They're overwhelmed. They're struggling on how to kind of find or decide on the franchise that they're interested in. One couple that comes to mind is a couple out of California. They had been on and off looking at franchises for 2 years. And, the pandemic threw a little bit of a curveball in that for them, but they had went down the deep dive of a couple of different franchise concepts, even hired an attorney to review the FDD, the franchise disclosure document. And they just wind up always getting cold feet, as well as they didn't know kind of all of the specific tactics to use to gain more clarity on making the right decision. And geez, within 3.5 months of working together, they signed a franchise agreement in the pet industry space. And actually, they are in lease negotiation right now. I've been still working with them through the process of them negotiating their LOI. And that their LOI went from $50,000 of TI of me helping them through the process to they did some good negotiating too, but through coaching them, now over $150,000 of TI, which is, just massively significant. And then it turns out the SBA lender they were going to use was going to try and basically take all of their TI and apply it immediately towards the loan and not re-amortize the loan. I hope I'm not getting too nerdy for people that are listening here. And so they were going to be stuck with the same high payment. Yeah, they would have paid it off probably in half the time. But most people getting started in a franchise, they want to get it profitable quickly. It's like, okay, I got to delay my gratification potentially for 5 years. So I taught them how to kind of negotiate that and instead of getting all of it in TI, negotiate even more towards free rent. So now they're going to have 16 months of free rent. 16 months. Wow. Which is insane. And you're talking about rent that all in with CAM and triple net and all that stuff is $12,000 a month. So it's a massive, massive win for them. Not only being able to just make a decision on a franchise, but now to really put themselves in a very, very strong position to be profitable quickly, which was another trick that worked well for for us is we had negotiated a solid amount of free rent in our first store in California. And that's key. I mean, I think most franchisees will tell you if you have a physical retail location, you've got to maximize the amount of free rent you get to give yourself the best position to succeed. Is
there some trick to doing that?
I think there are a few tricks to doing that. The gold standard overall is at least 6 months of free rent. One of the things I share with clients is don't put all your eggs in one basket for a location. Here's what happens, Chad. Most people get excited about one specific location. They show all of their cards to the landlord that we love this place. It's great. It's exactly where we wanted it. And then guess what happens? The landlord knows they got you. So, they're not going to be that willing to negotiate. So like any negotiation, the person that's most willing to truly walk away has the most leverage. So if you have 2 or 3 different locations that you're looking at that are strong contenders, well, then you're trying the same negotiation with all of them. And then you can see which one most aligns with what you're looking for. So.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to know. Good advice. I have one final question for you, but first, just tell me how people can connect with you or find out more about what you do.
Yeah, so 2 different places. First, you can go to my website, tariqjohnson.com, TARIQ Johnson, JOHNSON.com. And there you can grab my 7-step blueprint to business profits in 60 days for free. And that's a 28-page PDF. Geez, I think over 3,000 people have downloaded it already. And you can check me out on YouTube. If you go into YouTube and just type in my name, Tariq Johnson, then my stuff will pop up there.
Final question for you. What are your favorite, I think you mentioned one, what are your favorite books or podcasts that you found particularly valuable for you or enjoyable?
Yeah, interesting. The first book that popped in my head is Think and Grow Rich. I think that's like a classic for most people. Many, many years ago, I memorized the self-confidence formulas for that book. But I think Think and Grow Rich is a great book. And I'm a fan of The Secret, even though it simplifies everything and kind of makes it seem like if you think it'll just fall out of the sky. But, for me, really the principle of the law of attraction, I believe in very much and has been a very, very powerful tool in my life over the last 15 years.
Okay, great. Hey, thank you so much, Tariq. I really appreciate your time, and it was fun hearing your stories and your insights. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chad. Appreciate it.
So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25. Visit rise25.com to check out more episodes of the show and to learn more about how you can start your own podcast.